The military coup, the coup in Niger, the wonderful country in the Sahel region of West Africa, just north of Nigeria, is that wonderful country, Niger. And they have a recent military coup d'etat in which they just took the president, and there is a military takeover. These things are so common in the Francophone West African countries. It's almost just like it's nothing new. It's like every year there's like, two or three of them or something. There's been about a dozen of these in the past, few years. It just doesn't, it's like the same thing. Right now, the ECOWAS and Economic Community of West African States is saying they need to release the president and be finished with this in the next 1 week. I mean, what difference is that going to make? Does that address the underlying issue? Does that address the underlying problem? Or is it just going to be a matter of like, okay, so they do that, and 6 months from now we're back to the stage again with the same country, or maybe this time it's Chad, or maybe this time it's Burkina Faso again. Oh, I mean, sorry, they just have theirs more recent. Or maybe this time it's Guinea. These Francophone countries, France is the one that needs to solve this problem. France is the one, President Macron is the one that needs to sit down and realize that this is an important time in history. And he is the person in history to really sit down with President Ruto, who he recently had a conversation with about how to treat loans, sit down with other leaders who take leadership of Africa and of Pan-Africanism seriously, like Kagame, and talk to them about what is it that he needs to do. What is it that he needs to do to help these countries that he has benefited so much from? I understand that, it is easy to continue to want, all the resources of Africa close to for free so you can power the electricity in your country while they don't have any, right? I understand that it's easy to feel entitled to that exploiting because it's the dynamic, the relationship that you have formed with them, and to want things to continue that way. But there has to be a point where it has to stop, and the hypocrisy has to stop. And you have to let them be free. Otherwise, the independence that they earned when they did is just, they need their own independence too. You have to just find the time to sit down and re-examine these relationships and realize that it's time. Look at the relationship with British colonies. They don't have this problem as being so prone to coups d'etats. So maybe you need to sit down with them. Maybe President Macron, maybe you need to sit down with the British leaders and find out why their relationship with their former colonies is more successful and easier, and they don't have coups d'etats every 3 or 4 months the ways that former French colonies do. Maybe it's the chokehold that France still has on them that makes them so vulnerable to these constant fights for their independence, because essentially it's as if they don't really have it. And so they're going to act as if it's still 1963 or 1957 when Ghana got independence, or 60 when Nigeria got independence, when, maybe Niger feels like they're just getting their Independence Day is 2023. We need to change that so that they will feel free and not be caught up in this constant need to have, military coups d'etats to get rid of governments that they know are simply puppets of France, and it's just allowing them to steal pretty much, and patting those false democratic leaders, patting their Swiss bank accounts and just allowing them to steal. Eventually, especially the young people are going to screw these 30-year-olds or whatever that have military training. They're not going to stop trying. It's because it is a fight for their integrity. They're not going to stop trying to say, well, this is rubbish. This is a puppet government that just gives everything away to France or whoever for free, and they pad his account in Switzerland, and the people there are hungry. So as long as it remains that kind of dynamic, the people who are young, who have military training, are going to keep trying to change that. Every 6 months, there's going to be another coup. And the solution is not just like, we agree with this Western puppet leader. Just put him back there. Okay, he'll be back there. And then 6 months later, something will happen. I mean, it's not going to change until France changes its relationship. So basically, it's not really so interesting to me that Niger is revolting, that Burkina Faso has revolted, that Guinea, that Mali has, that Guinea-Bissau has, that Chad might, that all these Francophone countries, the fact that they have these problems with coups d'etats, with, revolting and freaking, is not interesting to me. It's not useful. What is more the focus is, why doesn't France change its dynamic with them? Why is their central bank not in their own country? Why do they spend any currency associated with France? France should be the one paying that. Why do they pay taxes to France? France should be the one paying them. They should be getting reparations of colonization. But instead, they're still paying to them. That's insane. That's completely, it's like, I'm choking you, but I need to choke you more. It's like that sort of thing. It needs to end. And I don't care about France's complaints about migration and issue with migrants that they have on land, because if the French government really cared, what it should do is really address the relationships it has with those Francophone countries and work on that. And then the issues with migrants on the French land would be easier too. It would make more sense too. It would have less toxicity, because one is very closely linked to the other. So if France wants to save itself from all the problems that it has with its former colonies and their sort of migrants all of the problems that it has in relating with all these countries, then it needs to reorganize the way in which it relates to these countries, and realize that the uranium that you're stealing isn't worth it. Everything that they're doing is not really going to serve them ultimately, because these other citizens are going to become a problem for France more and more and more until France stops it. So French president needs to sit down with Ruto and sit down with other governments, and really who are serious and who are thoughtful and who want to address the problem long term, who want to address the big picture of the problem, not just like, oh, well, in the next 6 days, do this. What difference does that make? In a few months, there'll just be another one. And I can't believe in all this time, I can't believe the irresponsibility of these so-called leaders, that in all this time, in the last 3-4 years that we've had about a dozen of these coups, none of them have sat down with each other. None of them have sat down, pure irresponsibility, and says there's something about that we need to work on reorganizing and really addressing how to fix and how to address the fundamental problem. We need to do that. They need to do that. That's the only thing that's going to make a difference. That's the only thing that's going to allay these young people's fears. And when they look at the future and they look at the state their country's in and the relationship that their country has with other, that's the only thing that's going to reassure them that it's going to be okay. And that needs to be done. And if you don't do that, then it's just going to continue. You're just gonna, we're just gonna have another one in a few months, and it'll just be like, oh, why is everything so this? Why is it so unstable? Why? Well, because, they see a problem, a dynamic that's unhealthy, and they feel the need to fight it. So help them work on that. So don't make enemies with the idea that these young people who are, want to have a coup d'etat. I mean, they have popular support on ground because the people feel it. So don't make enemies with the fact that they want that. Instead, address it. Try to, reformulate and rework the dynamic, the financial relationship between, so that it works for everybody.